Yeah, I don't remember what you
If
do.
you're the meeting host, sign in to start the meeting.
Right.
I'm not the meeting host, join meeting as an attendee. No, I don't want to do that. I'm going to let you open and then I'm going to come in.
Is that fan distracting? Or are we okay?
No, we're fine. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that. I know you said, yeah, Deb said that too, but I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, good morning to everyone. Welcome to our 1010 Faith Formation Hour. And our professor of faith today is Dr. Cecile Adkins, who teaches at Immaculata University. She is a professor, an assistant professor of dietetics and nutrition. And how appropriate, Methodists who are always dealing with food, have somebody who can tell us how to do that in a far more healthy way than we usually do with our casseroles and desserts that we bring to the covered dish dinners. Anyway, let me open with prayer, give us some instructions, and then get right into it. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this beautiful day that you have given us, with the sun that is shining, with rain that has fallen in the past few days, and with a lower humidity. For allowing us to be together, for the opportunity to worship. We give you thanks. Be with us today. May your Holy Spirit work among us despite the distance that we are from one another. Lord, may Cecile be a blessing to us all. We pray this in your holy name. Amen. So again, if you have questions, you're welcome to put them into the chat section. We will not be mentioning names since all of this is recorded and we don't have individual permission to mention your name. But don't be offended when we don't, because that is the reason why. Also, if there are a few of you that are online, it only shows up as one person per computer, but if you are a couple or a family, please let us know that there are 2 or 3 of you, however many, and we will count that as attendance. So I'm going to transition right into Cecile. She's a member of United Methodist Women. She and her husband Marcus and her boys, when they're around, Graham and Aiden, they flip-flop between the 9:30 and the 11 o'clock, or in the summer, we would say the 9 o'clock and the 11:15 services. She's grown up in California. She has lived in England. She has taught at various institutions of higher learning. And I'm just going to let her start by introducing herself and some of her history, and we'll take it from there. Dr. Adkins.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see some faces, well, yours, your face, and knowing that there are other people there too. Where to begin? Yeah, I'm a West Coast girl by birth. Did my undergrad out there, and then met a wonderful person in Hawaii and married him, and then brought us here to Pennsylvania right after we got married in 1991. And then within 5 years, we were in England for his job. And that was a great opportunity for us, having our boys overseas, being able to teach and do some private practice counseling, do some work there, being exposed to a different culture. Winston Churchill, who said England and America are 2 countries divided by a common language. Very, very accurate. And then after 11 years, we came back to Westchester. So we lived here, but when we first got married, and now we're back for our second time. Been here, this was 13 years now.
So you weren't a Methodist when you grew up, right?
No, I was a community church girl. Yeah, no. So yeah, so it's interesting, it's good, and I think, you know, the balance for us between flipping between the 2 services, getting the contemporary and then getting the more traditional liturgical worship, is just a great balance right now for us.
Yeah. Well, were you a part of the community church? Was it more Pentecostal? I mean, you said your mother, when we had talked in the past, was a hippie.
She was.
So how did that all work out?
Yeah, she's listening right now. She's probably going to text me soon about that.
Oh, well, confess things to the pastor. You can't trust me for anything.
It's recorded now. Non-denominational, just okay. Really, yeah. So
Right.
we didn't have people that were in our church that were from, multiple backgrounds of different religions. That changed when we moved to England. We were going to a community church, and it was an evangelical free church, but
Oh, yeah, right,
evangelical in England is very different from evangelical in America.
right.
Their evangelical is very much conservative, and it was fine. So very much community based, and we were exposed to a lot of different other believers that had different backgrounds that came in. Some people coming in from a Pentecostal or an Anglican, Catholic, whatever it was. So that was really different for us. It was good.
All right.
Yeah.
So when you have the title free in front of a church, it doesn't mean that they don't take an offering.
No, that had to do with the landed nobility, and they're bringing their servants. That's the congregation that we attended historically had been where their servants would go for church or for their
Right.
services.
Oh, okay. Because I know there are free churches, evangelical free churches in the United States, free Presbyterian, free Methodist, and that they are taking offering. Otherwise,
Yes.
they'd be the fullest churches in the country at that.
Yes. Yeah,
Anyway,
we were under no disillusion that they needed to also have funds brought in. So yeah.
Yeah, indeed. That's how it works. So tell us a little bit about your work at Immaculata.
Okay. Well, I got into nutrition in general. I'll go back just a couple years before starting at Immaculata. My mom we always had a garden, and we raised chickens, and we had goats, even in Southern California. That was back in the days before, well, it was very different growing up there in the 70s, 1970s. And we always cooked and we always baked, and it was just something that I was really passionate about. And when I was looking for a major in university, I had considered pre-med, something medical related. I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. No offense to the nurses, it's a wonderful profession, but that was just not really for me. So that just kind of was a perfect fit. And from there, so right after I graduated as an undergrad, I got married and we moved here. So Marcus started the job here in King of Prussia, and I wound up doing an internship, a clinical internship, which is what we have to do, and wound up working on a master's degree, and then we wound up living overseas right after that. So my career path was a little bit different. I had a few years here, and then I had some volunteer and paid employment overseas. And when we got back, I received an invitation from Delaware County Community College through Immaculata University, because I was an alumni of Immaculata for the master's degree, that Delaware County was looking for instructors for registered licensed dietitians in the state to teach their courses. And I thought, well, let's see if I'm any good at this, and let's see if I like it. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I had a bit of a shell shock, maybe a culture shock at first. I think it was my first or second class I was teaching for them. And our boys were 8 and 10 or 9 and 11 at the time, whatever. I'll have to think, I have to do the math better. And I'm standing in front of a room full of college students, traditional and non-traditional ages. And I just had this sudden oh my gosh, I'm old enough to be their mother and my kids are so much younger. And I literally had to say, you know what, hang on just one sec. And I went into the hallway and I just took a few deep breaths and just said a quick prayer, and I just came back in and I was fine. But it was that whole realization that, wow, I could have a lot older kids. But I love dealing with the students. I love working with the students. What I teach anything from basic introductory human nutrition, which is just very much skimming the surface of so many different topics. We get a little bit into science. I also teach the more science-heavy courses if I need to. I teach the nutrition counseling. I teach the nutrition research class, the community nutrition class, and all of the education classes at the grad and the undergraduate level. And throughout, from Delaware County, and I was an adjunct for a while at Westchester University, I've taught a lot of different courses.
So you said when your nerves got the best of you, you went outside the classroom to a brief prayer. I guess at a secular institution of higher learning, that's what you had to do. But now you're at Immaculata, and you can pray right in the classroom, right?
You could, yeah. I mean, I can't assume that everybody who's sitting in the classroom with me is a believer or whatever. Right. But yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the big differences at Immaculata, because it was an all-girls college and it was all I guess nuns who taught, a female obviously, that they would have, the prayers are listed and they're given out. They've got a laminated prayer, and sometimes they change, I've noticed, and they're right on the podium when you walk in the classroom. And I'm pretty sure that the nuns use them, and I don't know who else uses them, and we're free to use it and we're free to not use it. And it's definitely an interesting place to be when you've got people that walk by you and just tap you, a nun, and or the pastor there, I guess he's a priest, will tap you and say, I'm praying for you, you're doing a great job, or, you know, whatever, praying for your students. And it's a very different environment. But I have had, you know, I've had opportunities at Westchester as well too. I've had students that have asked me to pray with them and for them, and they've asked me if they could pray for me. So it wasn't like a group thing in the classroom. It was mostly like after class or during office hours. If I happened to be in the office and I was by myself, you know, I had one time a student that came in, and she, after a class session, and she had said, you know, I just got the sense that you might be, you know, feeling some stress and some, you know, we're overwhelmed with some things. And I was just wondering if I could pray for you. And I'm like, I'm never going to turn down a prayer for me. So if you're offering, I'm accepting. Yeah. So it's,
Wow.
yeah, but it is different at Immaculata. It's just more accepted, and it's not, you know, looked down upon, and it's welcome.
Huh. Wow. I just find that intriguing. It's not quite the narrative we usually get. The vision, perception that we're given is that Christian institutions are a little more oppressive and not quite so open, and secular institutions are the ones that are open and
Right.
not oppressive. But you get a little different feel for that here as you talk about that. Interesting.
Well, now, if I started talking and preaching and, you know, overstepping my bounds, then I'm sure somebody would say something to me. But,
Right.
you know, if I'm within my domain, within my area of expertise, and, you know, if I know or feel that people are comfortable, you know, whatever. And I've had students that have come into the office and for office hours, or just for advising, or just to drop by and chit chat if my door's open. And, you know, it's not necessarily about the prayer, but it's about the connectedness. And I think that that's part of what I enjoy most about teaching at this level, is that while they are children in adult bodies, and for the most part, not incredibly responsible and, you know, all that other stuff, or mature, or, you know, have a lot of experience, it's a wonderful group of people to deal with. And I'm fortunate that, like you and Deb, our boys are college age. Well, Graham just graduated this year, but he's still 22. And so I'm very much versed in the college age kind of thing right now, although girls are a little different for me than boys. But yeah, no, I really do enjoy dealing with them and teaching and watching them grow and being a mentor and looking for opportunities for the students to participate and just build some significant and unique skills so that we're setting them up for the best opportunity when they leave the institution. You know, Immaculata is very small compared to Westchester, where I came from. So I went from classes of 45 to 50 to now I have maybe 8 to 15 in a class. And we've got a strong, in our nutrition and dietetics program, we have a strong non-traditional program. So these are students that come in, they're older age, non-traditional age. So they could be 25 and not have a degree, but they're still considered non-traditional. Or they could be 30, 40, 50. We had a 65-year-old that was coming back as a retired pharmacist, and she was coming back to become a registered dietitian. So she had to take some classes, and she's finishing up our graduate program, I think this fall. So it's really cool to be able to work with all kinds of different ages within the classroom and have the students interact and relate. And I just love learning from them. I love teaching them, and I love mentoring them, and I love learning from them.
So having grown up in the faith, having loved to bake, you moved into nutrition and dietetics. Can you talk a little more about that interface of faith and your chosen vocation?
So food is universal. While it might be different, everybody has to eat, right? It's not about like medications or, you know, different treatments or whatever it is. we all have to eat or we're not around. So it's a great vehicle for talking with people and learning about people's culture, learning about their belief practices, learning about the different dietary guidelines and practices, you know, the kosher and the halal for the Jewish or the Muslim. It's really interesting to me to see how food can be a ceremonial, a part of ceremony. Like we have the bread and the wine, but other religions have other things that they do as well. And it's just that isn't, I mean, to me, that's an obvious part of it right there, but there's all these different layers of cultural nuances that come into play when you start to get to know people. And what their beliefs are and what they value the food. And, you know, some people that come in and they think that they know everything, and then they start our program and they realize they know nothing. And I can remember even saying this at Westchester University that, because I remember being asked this by a couple of students, that, well, you know, how can you guarantee that your food is safe? How can we guarantee that we're getting this and it's not going to harm us? And I remember stopping and just turning around and saying, this is one of the reasons that people of faith pray for their food. They're asking God to bless and purify it. And, you know, and I just leave it at that, because however they want to interpret it, that's up to them. That's not, you know, that was not my intent to go any deeper in that. But food is a great vehicle for bridging gaps and differences and being able to talk to people about just about anything. Because we all like to eat, right?
Well, I've been intrigued. You use the phrase cultural competence in nutrition and dietetics. Now, as a pastor, we have continuing education and everything from evangelism to sexual harassment to cultural competence.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, as a pastor, involves our actions and especially our speech.
Right.
But you linked up cultural competence with nutrition and dietetics. Talk about that, please.
So that was my area of study for my doctoral dissertation. The title of my dissertation, I'll say it slowly, was Instructional Strategies that Promote Cultural Competence in Nutrition and Dietetics Education. So basically I was looking at instructors and educators of dietetics or nutrition students like myself, and also interns, intern directors who had them after they graduate, and asking the question of my peers, doing the research and asking a question of my peers, how did they incorporate cultural competence into their curriculum, or how did they instill those values of social justice and equity and equality, and paying attention to the marginalized and the people of color, or the people who have assimilated or acculturated or who have emigrated into our world and where we are at. My intent was never to take it and look at it from a global perspective, although it kind of gets to that the more you get into it, but really more to look at how can we handle or improve our students' interaction with people who are different from them, whether it's belief, whether it's skin color, whether it's language, religious practice, sexual orientation, whatever it is. And how can they be better equipped to deal with our changing to a majority country by 2050, I think is the year. You know, how are they going to be able to work with people who don't believe the same way that they do? How would you work with a group of people who are from the deaf community? That's another cultural group. Or the people who are blind, or people that were raised in a different culture that were very different and had very different dietary practices. And so those are things that I got interested in that because when I first started out as an adjunct at Westchester University, I think this was 2009, I read an article. I was teaching a nutrition and culture class, and I had never taught a nutrition and culture class. And I was reading an article. I was doing some additional research to round out a couple of lectures. And this one specifically came in from talking about Africa and the African diaspora and that forced slavery and movement. And a couple of the articles that I read they're okay, but they didn't seem to have a lot of information and good stuff in them. And then one of the articles, again, a published peer-reviewed research article, it just made me mad because it really talked about the fact that they didn't, as an instructor, and this was a person in my position, they didn't need to bother teaching about cultures and differences in diet or how people believe or whatever. They just really needed to have their students or interns just drive down the road and open your window or just open your front door in a different neighborhood, and you'll get the gist of all the culture. And I thought that was really superficial and a really immature and not a very scholarly way to look at this. I mean, we don't have to dig too deep to find a lot of different aspects, differences and aspects and all that stuff, but it's also, we don't want to generalize or stereotype. And I think, to me, that's the essence of where cultural competence comes in with nutrition. It's dealing with racism. It's dealing with all the isms, right? Sexism and feminism and all these other things. It's making sure that everybody feels equal and welcomed and has access to food and healthcare. And just because their sexual orientation is different from mine, that they still feel welcome and cared for, and that they have a right to the basic things in life. And really, for me, it's the passion is there to make sure that our students especially have a lot of exposure to different cases and different scenarios and just different practices and experience before they go out into this big world and have to deal with it.
So cultural competence in nutrition and dietetics is more than just about ethnic foods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm thinking of the great unwashed, and I would put myself into that category of, all right, so what's different about nutrition and dietetics for in terms of gender, or as you mentioned, in terms of the deaf? You know, how is that different? Do they eat different foods than we do?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes there's disparities with socioeconomic status, with where you live, urban versus rural. We have the whole concept of food deserts, where there's a lack or a limitation of access to healthful and nourishing food. Classically, we see this now in a lot of urban settings where there are bodegas and corner stores and maybe ethnic markets. But a lot of the foods that are carried are shelf stable, long life, highly processed, not fresh. So we wouldn't necessarily categorize those things as really healthy foods overall. So that, you know, we definitely have seen through the years that certain demographics of people and certain groups of people have different practices, not always from what they believe or grew up or how they grew up, but from the environment in which they live. And that's a big factor. It's not just, so it's not just unique to nutrition, but it's definitely an element in healthcare in general, and good healthcare education and provision in general, that we address the marginalized groups, that we address the access to food and healthcare, that we address, you know, a person who comes into your private practice and has 5 kids, is a Mormon, and, you know, XYZ. You need to have some idea of what their belief system is, their structure is. I can remember working with patients when I was a clinical dietitian, and also clients when I was in private practice, that came in and just had different, like, I couldn't talk to the woman without addressing the man, because of their system of belief and their cultural heritage and how their traditions were, was that he was the one who needed to be addressed for everything. And, you know, being a white girl from Southern California, that just, I was like, wow, okay, that's different. So so it was just, and then when I dealt with lesbian couples in private practice, it was just learning how to talk to people in a respectful way. And really, you know, I don't want to minimize cultural competence and then the significance or importance of treating everybody equal and how and just, but it really does go back to the golden rule. You know, how do I want to be treated? And then this is really how I need to be treating other people. And sometimes it's just as simple as reminding our students that, look, you wouldn't want to be talked to in this certain way, or forced to take these medications, or preached at, in that certain way about, you know, this is what you absolutely need to do. It's more about an interaction and a dialogue where you're partners. And I know that that's how the whole medical system has changed, where now, you know, it's patient-centered care. It's not the doctor in the 50s with the white lab coat smoking a cigarette, having a cocktail at 5 o'clock, telling you what you have to do all the time. But it's the whole healthcare team ideally working together and getting much better at treating the patient as the center of care, and making sure that their beliefs and their understanding and their values are involved and included in that. And so I think it's not just about nutrition, but nutrition is a part of the overall health and health care within that system.
I want to use that as a springboard for the next question to ask. But before I do, it's a good place to put in a plug for our Elmer's Garden, our community garden here at Grove. Always looking for people to do that. If you want to get out of the house and you you at a safe place where you're not around people and outside, call the office. We'll get you connected to do some gardening out there, which is a great healthy activity any day of the week, but truly helps those bodegas and the food banks things with fresh produce, which is
Does that grow for? Do we grow produce from Elmer's Garden for the Chester County Food Bank?
Yes.
Yeah. So Immaculata has a big garden as well, and there's a gardening club up there, and it's run by a couple of nuns who are in the biology and chemistry department. That's their passion, and they grow exclusively for the Chester County Food Bank.
Huh, right.
They volunteer out there on Tuesdays, and they run out there, and during the growing season, they've got shuttling stuff in and donating, and that's definitely a way to be involved.
It's a great intergenerational activity. So if you have children or grandchildren that that live with you, because distancing, you can be with them, you can bring them here and
well, the thing with that, with some kind of a community gardening and then gardening for, or doing something that benefits somebody else, that really does help to bring to light some of the need in the area, because it's very easy to live in an affluent area that is predominantly white and of European descent, and to not see the need around us. If you don't stray too far, it's very easy to miss it. You can live in your own little bubble, and that's just whatever. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but when we talk about healthcare professionals who need to be working with everybody, and future dietitians that we're teaching now to become and to be trained, that need to be able to work with everybody. They need to be able to work with everybody and to understand and to ask the right questions, or to see certain things and then just to question, ask. I'm a big fan, and I learned this in England. Smile a lot and ask questions, and that kind of gets you about 90% of the way. Then you can kind of process it and change what your approach is.
So let's go a little deeper with that interface of nutrition and therapeutic medicine. Would we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. It's huge. It's big. There are so many more programs that focus on functional medicine or I guess functional nutrition would be under the umbrella of functional medicine. But really looking at more of an Eastern medicine approach to not just treating the symptoms, but treating the whole person. And nutrition really has always fit well into that approach. I mean, Hippocrates was even the one who claimed, let your medicine be thy food and your food be thy medicine. And in some of our classes, we really, take that, we strip that down, and we really look at, well, what does it mean to have the food treat you in a medicinal way? This is gaining popularity, and I'm sure that everybody here who has been reading or watching TV or noticing in magazines or journals or whatever, that plant-powered or plant-based eating is becoming a lot more prevalent in the mainstream than it used to be. And it's not about veganism, and it's not about being a vegetarian. It's about making plants the center of our plate, assuming we eat on a plate, in our meals, and then having the animal products and the other foods kind of be accompaniments, or small sides, and it's just about shifting a balance, and it's about the mindset, because of the research that's linking too much animal protein and animal food sources with chronic health diseases. So it's interesting, because I think nutrition, we've always preached that balance and all those really boring kind of words, balance and moderation, and everything looks beige. But really, I feel like right now we're having our day in the fact that people have realized how significant it is to have plants in the diet, and to really focus on that can prevent, and it also can treat certain conditions as well.
I know myself. I'm one of those people, blessed to be able to eat anything I want and have no effect on my cholesterol, because my cholesterol problem is genetic.
Yeah.
So, to be on a statin, I've learned, and sadly, not from my doctors, but I've learned there are certain foods that I should and shouldn't eat that affect the operation of that statin.
Yeah.
So the kind of thing that you're talking about is so practical for the rest of us.
It's really about, it is, and it's a great point, but it's really about listening to your body and knowing your body and asking the right questions. Do I really want this second piece of chocolate cake, or is it just I'm bored, I'm emotional, I'm hormonal, or whatever the answer is. Sometimes it's okay. It's not that it's sometimes okay to eat foods when you're just feeling like you need the extra piece. But again, it's the habits on a day-to-day basis that are the things that add up the most. It's not the special occasion indulgences. But no, that's definitely true. And I know my own personal experiences professionally and personally, dealing with specialist doctors that you expect to get some answers and they don't have them. I'm going to say right now, especially the GI doctors, and this is definitely not a slam at all, but the gastroenterologists do not have all of the answers. No specialist does. Even the functional medicine doctors don't have all the answers. They charge a lot of money. They do a lot of tests, and some things are still experimental. There's still so much research right now going on with the human genome and how the foods we eat impact our genetic makeup, and then how our genetic makeup impact the foods that we choose to consume. So for example, you could choose to eat something and it will metabolize very similarly for you and for me if we ate the same food, but it might drive your cholesterol up and not impact me at all.
Right.
But I might eat something that it would not have any effect on you, and for me it would drive my blood sugars up, or I don't know, whatever, cause me to gain an extra 15 pounds or whatever it is. So there's a lot of research that's focusing on that. And really it's again about not necessarily patients healing thyself, and it's certainly not about Dr. Google or WebMD to self-diagnose. But it's really listening to yourself and having that awareness that no, I don't want to be on these medications, because we know that every medication has side effects, and all we're doing many times is taking more and more medications to balance out the side effects, when it could be, in many cases I've worked with people, and it's just dietary changes. Some of them are simple, some of them are hard. Again, this goes back to culture and tradition and the belief that you always have to have a big Sunday roast and all those things that we do on a regular basis, or that we believe. And sometimes it's getting people to change their perspective and their belief and their tradition, and then incorporating more food, more fiber, more fluids, things like that.
I probably should get, not now, but a little later, is the contact for that pharmacist who became a registered dietitian, because I talk to pharmacists and I've talked to dietitians, but someone who understands that interface would be
Yeah. We are definitely planning on having her come back and do special topic presentations for our graduate students, because she's got a very unique perspective, having been trained as a pharmacist and working in pharmacy for 30 plus years. And now she's going out into the world as a registered dietitian. So she's got a lot more going on. But as you can imagine, it's difficult to, nearly impossible to be an expert in too many areas. So she'll have that grounding of pharmacy, but she's not going to be able to keep up on all the medications and like she would as a pharmacist. But absolutely, she's a phenomenal person. They were very thorough, very detailed, as you would expect for a pharmacist. So yeah, no, but it's good. We have a lot of people, getting back to who I teach and what I do at Immaculata, we have a lot of people who've changed careers. Recently, we have two women who came through within the past couple of years, and they both are retired from their primary jobs, and they've decided they want to do something in health and they want to help people. And nutrition is all about helping people. And if you don't like people, I always tell my students, if you don't like people, this is not the career or profession for you to be in, because you're working with people all the time, whether it's food research and food science, whether it's counseling in private practice, working with patients in a hospital, teaching people in a classroom, teaching people how to cook, doing culinary things. We're always working with people.
So what would you say is the most exciting, invigorating thing that you are working on right now, or maybe just finished a project? What would that be?
Wow. Okay, from a professional standpoint, there are two things that I think are really exciting. And these are not necessarily areas that I'm super skilled in, but I like to learn from my students. I like to grow. One of the things that I like so much about dealing with the college age students are that they have specific likes and dislikes, and they come in with very strong opinions for the most part, even though they're not mature and experienced and all the other stuff. And right now the trend seems to be with students want to get into a profession where they're working with people with eating disorders, or they're working in a sports nutrition standpoint, like working with athletes. So performance athletes could be high school, college, Division I especially. They have a lot of, all the big name top 10 or Big 10 or whatever you call it, schools. They have staffs of registered dietitians that work with the athletes. But those are revenue generating schools that obviously aren't generating so much revenue right now. And then working with Olympic athletes and elite athletes. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is trying to find opportunities for my students that meet what their interests are. So I wrote a research grant for us to get training on campus for a program called the Body Project, which is a part of the National Eating Disorder Association, NEDA. And so we've got a group of eight or nine students and faculty that are going to be trained this fall by me to be peer leaders that will run the groups in the spring. So it's really about identifying and dealing with disordered eating or eating disorders amongst college age females. So I love seeing the girls, because it unfortunately doesn't include guys just yet. It's not a program we wrote, it's one that we're trained to use. But I love being able to meet what the students' needs are and what their interests are. And then the other program, it just mirrors what I said. So the eating disorders and the sports nutrition, we have a sports certified registered dietitian as an adjunct faculty at Immaculata. She's been there for many years. And my first year, I had a female basketball player who was a nutrition and dietetics major, approach me. Was her advisor. And she asked me why we didn't have any nutrition education for athletes. And I'm like, okay, here's another thing to go into. So we started a program called NEFA, Nutrition Education for Athletes. And it's Patty, our sports certified dietitian, and myself. And we usually have 2 junior, senior nutrition or exercise science and athletic training students work with us. We do a research study every year. And what we've done is we've educated some of the teams, the women's soccer team, the men's basketball, women's basketball, swimming team, and a few others. And we just finished putting a huge 3-module multi-part lesson online so that all of our athletes have 24/7 access, starting actually this August, so that's kind of exciting, to nutrition education. So we take them through some basics, and then we take them through some things that are specific to them and interest-based. 10-minute lessons, couple of multiple choice questions to answer correctly before they move on. And what's really cool is that the athletic director and their 2 assistant directors have asked me to have access to those modules as well for education. But this is something that our students can write recipes, they can help do the research for the lessons. They don't present the lessons, but they can help do the background work. They can help when we do any in-person live. They help when we do private counseling with the athletes one-on-one, as long as there's consent. So really, right now, I'm super excited because I've been working on these projects for 3 years, both of them separately, but kind of concurrently. And now they're kind of they're now at the point where they're moving more on their own, and I can step back a little bit and I can watch the students really take them on and run. And those were things that, again, were not my area of expertise, but they were things that the students were really passionate about. And it feels good to be able to help them and then to be able to just kind of step back and watch them move forward with it. And I've enjoyed what I've been learning, learning a lot about disordered eating and about sports nutrition.
I'm a fan of what they call classic TV, from the 50s on up. I watch very little contemporary television other than the news, and I wish sometimes I didn't watch that. Yeah. But I've noticed that when I watch those old shows that many of the women had that wasp waistline, and the fashions, enhanced that. But we talked about that wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. But even the people that they themselves made fun of their weight, whom when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, were seen as overweight. We're seen as fat. Mm-hmm. Those people now are really rather slim compared to the standard of the day. Mm-hmm. Can you speak about diet and body image and that change that has gone on?
Right. So when I wrote for that grant for the Body Project as part of the National Eating Disorder Association, the Body Project, it doesn't just look at having peers mentoring peers. So it's not like me teaching or talking to a group of girls. They're doing it amongst themselves. So there's more trust. They build that community and that safe environment. That one specifically looks at challenging the ideal body image And it really is about promoting body positivity. And that is definitely a huge part of our culture, is that there is this stigma of being heavy, and there is this almost praise of being slender and fit, but you can't go too far, because then we're going to, blast you if you're too thin and emaciated and, anorexic looking or whatever. That unfortunately is a part of our culture, and the part of the fact that we place such an emphasis on physical beauty and aesthetics, and the definition of beauty has been maybe just one directional, and you're not very broad spectrum, just very myopic and very narrow focused. I can remember when I was teaching at Delaware County Community College, I had two African students, and these were students that had just recently emigrated from Western African nations. And one of the girls it was a big class, maybe 28 students, and one of the girls was engaged to be married, and she was planning her wedding, and she made a comment in class that just silenced everybody. And she said that she was happy to be here, that she was excited to be able to having a lot of different rich foods, and she was trying to gain weight for her wedding. And of course, all the white girls, European girls, were just like, well, that's so the opposite of what typically we're taught and what is enforced as a stereotype in our culture. And I asked her to explain her perspective on that. And it was really a lot about fertility, and body image is embraced and viewed differently in different places in the world. And that was a great learning opportunity for me and for the rest of the class. And again, that's one of the things that I love about engaging with students, is learning different things and seeing where they're coming from. And it was just like an eye-opener. It's like, wow, okay, that's so foreign from what I'm used to thinking and dealing. But, really, that was probably something that started me off on the path of making sure that people are, that our students are getting a balanced approach and a good, healthy perspective of who they're going to be working with and dealing with.
So we're down to our last few moments. I'm checking with Pastor Lynn. Do we have any questions that have arisen?
We don't have questions.
None at this
We did
point.
have, some comments.
Okay, we've got some comments, but no.
Yeah, I see the chat. The chat is busy, but
Yeah, the cats had some
Okay.
garden.
Right. Is there anything that you would like to impart to us in these last few moments?
just stay happy. It's not about physical health. Right now, a lot of it is about mental health as well. And just be mindful and aware that the foods that you consume and the health practices that you have in general impact you physically and mentally. And I think that that's just a little plug for just take care of yourself right now. There are some resources that I run across recently that really look at the coronavirus. It's a coronavirus anxiety workbook, and it's a free resource if anybody's interested, or I can just share it and you can pass it on. It really talks about exercise and the importance of, staying connected, positive, watching your information diet as well as your food diet. There are so many aspects to health, and nutrition is one of them, but it is a big component. But I'm happy to share resources like that, and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're welcome. I'm delighted that you're here. For those who don't know, this is Cecile is the second Immaculata professor who we worked with here at Grove. Her partner in crime, a professor across the hall from her, Mr. Sheila, was a part of our forgiveness class shortly after I came, and Cecile helped this past Lent with the fasting class. So we've had some good relationships with the faculty at Immaculata. So thank you for that too.
Yeah, and Sister Sheila, she's lovely. She's literally right across the hall from me, and I've seen her this summer when I go into the office, and she loved being here.
Well, she was an absolute joy.
Yeah.
The funniest thing about her was being a good Roman Catholic nun and all the rest of us being, outstanding United Methodist. She kept referring to wanting to enjoy a Guinness. So, there were some Methodists who had no idea what she was talking about. There were some who were, kind of doing this thing, and there are others saying, I want to become.
I'll go with you. Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell a little tale on her. She often has a 6-pack or 2 of Guinness in her office. not open, but because people know she likes it so much. And she's a wee little tiny thing anyway.
Yes.
And so on Good St. Patty's Day or for her birthday, there are other faculty or whatever, I don't think it's students, but other faculty that will drop her off a 6-pack of Guinness because they know how much she likes it.
Oh dear.
And I do my best. I give her muffins when I bring stuff in and I bake, and cookies and stuff, and she gets the stuff that I bring. I've not gotten a Guinness in return though, so I think I got to.
Well, you hang out with a Methodist, we all have problems. So.
Seriously.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks to everybody who has joined us. Next week is our last week of this Professors of Faith series. It will be Dr. Amy Lakowski, who teaches at Newman University. She sings in the Tabernacle Choir. She teaches nursing there. She specifically teaches a class on nursing and faith. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the last week of July and moving into August, we're going to be doing some stuff on racism, and that should be really helpful. We're bombarded with that, and sometimes in not such healthy ways. What we're planning in the weeks ahead would be a good way to learn and to share, a safe place to talk about some really difficult things. So thank you again, Cecile, and we hope to see some of you at our 11:15 worship service. And the rest of you will see next week. God bless. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.